By the end of January 2026, the images of Prime Minister Keir Starmer shaking hands in the Great Hall of the People signaled a definitive end to the Cold War era of UK-China relations. However, as the Prime Minister's plane left Beijing, the domestic cleanup that made the trip possible began to look less like a diplomatic triumph and more like a systemic security compromise. To secure this high-stakes summit, the Labour government systematically dismantled years of defensive posturing. The most glaring evidence was the strategic quieting of the 2025 Parliamentary spy case, which was dropped by the Crown Prosecution Service just months before the trip, citing a lack of prosecutable evidence, despite repeated warnings from the security services. This was followed by the Deputy Prime Minister's executive override to approve the mega embassy at Royal Mint Court, a move that effectively traded a piece of London's sovereign soil for a seat at the trade table in Beijing. The immediate achievements of the visit, ranging from green finance memorandums to relaxed poultry export rules, have been hailed by Downing Street as a victory for pragmatic engagement. But intelligence officials at MI5 and GCHQ warn that the cost is measured in invisible vulnerabilities. The approval of the Royal Mint Court site is particularly alarming. It places a massive, unsearchable diplomatic fortress directly atop the City of London's primary fiber optic arteries. Security experts argue that while the Prime Minister secured short-term commercial contracts for the city, he simultaneously provided an adversary with a physical listening post to monitor the very financial data those contracts generate. This mirrors the ongoing friction over TikTok's data harvesting, where the UK government has struggled to balance platform popularity against the risk of mass data exfiltration to Beijing. Furthermore, the economic rationale for this pivot appears increasingly shaky as China's internal economy faces a demographic cliff and chronic involution, a state of intense internal competition with diminishing returns. While British luxury brands celebrate the promise of continued capital, the reality is one of massive capital flight. Critics argue that the UK is tethering its economic growth to a shrinking golden goose. By allowing the mega embassy to proceed as a diplomatic gift, the UK has not only ignored China's internal instability, but has also created a rift with the United States. In Washington, the response has been icy. Senior officials have hinted that the Five Eyes intelligence-sharing bridge is now under repair. There are even whispers that future cooperation regarding the Diego Garcia military base, a linchpin of Anglo-American security, could be jeopardized if London is perceived as a weak link in the face of Chinese intelligence expansion. As the Prime Minister returns to London, he faces a country more divided than when he left. The domestic legal battle is just beginning. Residents of Tower Hamlets have leveraged the post-visit momentum to accelerate their judicial review in the High Court, claiming the government's approval was an irrational act of state that ignored documented national security risks for the sake of a photo op. The sovereign breach is no longer a theoretical warning. It is a live political crisis. Britain may have ended the diplomatic freeze, but in doing so, it has invited a permanent and powerful presence into its historic heart, leaving the security of its digital and physical infrastructure in a state of unprecedented uncertainty.